Welcome to Live at the League. I'm Emily Kalashevsky, Assistant Director for Member Experience and Learning here at the League. We had planned to be on location in beautiful Frankfort, Michigan for today's show, but with weather moving across the state, we decided to stay put and record safely from our own area in mid Michigan here. But we are still excited to spotlight the great work happening in Frankfort and share some inspiring stories about how the community is tackling one of Michigan's biggest challenges, housing. Before we dive in, it's worth noting today marks the 50th anniversary of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. It feels fitting that we had to change some of our plans due to weather. And that was really a moment forever etched in our Great Lakes history and in the hearts of Michigan's coastal communities and all across the state. And of course, tomorrow is Veterans Day, a time to honor and thank all who've served in our armed forces. We're grateful for their dedication and the role they play in strengthening communities across our state. All right, so we're going to get into it today. Coming up, we'll hear from Josh Mills, Superintendent of the City of Frankfort, about the city's efforts to expand attainable housing through creative partnerships, local bank collaborations, and innovative zoning. We'll also be joined by Jen Richtring from our state and federal affairs team for an update on statewide housing policy and the league's ongoing advocacy work. If you're watching live, please feel free to drop your questions in the chat or Q&A box. We'll answer as many as we can throughout the show. Let's get started. All right. So I'm joined virtually, of course, by Josh Mill, Superintendent for the City of Frankfort. Thank you for being here with us today virtually, Josh. We wish we could be there in person.
Oh, thank you, Emily. I wish you were here as well. It's beautiful out right now.
It sounds like it. So, Josh, Frankfurt's really been making waves on the housing front. Can you start by giving us an overview of what's driving this focus and what the biggest housing needs look like in your community in particular?
Well, as a community, we really have striven, we strive to be a well balanced and sustainable community. And with that, the drive and focus we endure each day is to ensure that we continually enhance our overall environmental, social, and economic well being. And we've looked at our housing issues for many decades, and I'm so proud of this community and what we've been able to do at certain areas dating back to the early 80s through the 90s and currently now. We really noticed about 25 years ago that the cost of living was outpacing the living wage, and over the last 25 years, it's just it's gone to the extent where we've had to do so many things to put us in a better position to facilitate the needs of our community. And we're a resort based community,
Mhm.
but with that being said, we've noticed that the workers that we need to sustain the quality of life amenities that people desire, but they can't afford to live here, which is why we've done what we've needed to do as a community to be in a better position to facilitate the housing. Recently, because we're part of the Housing North, which is Region D, which is a big focus for the state of Michigan through MISHDA to
Mhm.
tackle the housing issues, and it's done so more so on a regional level than anything. But for us in Region D in Northwest Michigan, um, we had a recent market analysis report for Benzie County. Benzie County is the smallest county in
Mhm.
Michigan. At one time, it was one of the poorest counties. Right now, though, because of what's been going on in this beautiful state, our housing values are in the top 10 of all counties in the state of Michigan, which is another matter that we've had to endure as a community to ensure that we can provide the housing to facilitate our needs. But essentially, this market rate analysis report has indicated that Benzie County needs 1,508 new homes by 2027.
Wow.
And of that, it's cited that 1,294 of those should be homes to be purchased, whereas 214 is set aside for rentals. Which going into that analysis, you would almost think it would be flipped, but
Sure.
the data really indicates that we need to create housing for people to own and to be part of a sustainable community. We also took that analysis and looked at Frankfort, Alberta, two communities that are side by side. We share
Mhm.
a wastewater treatment facility. We share a lot of resources together as a community. But just for little Frankfort in Alberta, that market rate analysis dictated that we need 116 new homes and 36 new rental units by 2027. And since Frankfurt and Alberta have done a really outstanding job reinvesting in its infrastructure, I think Frankfort, Alberta, are going to be looked at for the entire county and in other areas of the region for facilitating housing initiatives. So we're preparing ourselves, and we laid the foundation to be in a better position to accommodate the needs of the community.
Sure. Well, one of the key challenges everywhere is funding, especially for construction loans. Can you talk about how the city has been working with local banks to help get projects off the ground?
So we created a housing commission and a land trust, and it was probably the two best things that we've done in the last 10 years. Our land trust is they just completed 4 homes a year ago. They're under construction right now with 4 new homes that'll be sold. What we've been able to do with two local banks, the State Savings Bank and the Outer State Bank, wanted to be part of the solution. So through some creative collaboration, they are providing a CD program that individuals in our community can donate toward. Or not, I'm sorry, it's not a donation. They could invest. Let's just say, for instance, a $10,000 CD can be invested to State Savings Bank or held with the Honor State Bank in our community, and these individuals are earning 3.7%, so 3.75% interest on the return of the CD, and the land trust is actually borrow against that to build these homes. Both banks have set aside $300,000. Last I heard, last week, the Honor State Bank has $300,000 worth of commitments in place, and the State Savings Bank has $230,000 of commitments in place. So the land trust uses that CD as collateral to borrow against building the home. So in essence, there's never any construction loans taken out. There's a
Mhm.
little bit of risk, obviously, for folks that are investing or providing the initial investment for the CD. But we've been good on everything that we've been able to endure as a community through our land trust. So it's just really unique and outside the box where we're not worrying about securing construction loans through a nonprofit.
Sure. So it's a really interesting setup that you have. And if, other communities are listening and think, wow, that sounds super interesting and something that maybe we want to look into, what advice would you have for folks who are thinking about getting started with something like setting up a housing commission and that land trust and that CD program or something similar?
Well, housing commissions are relatively easy to initiate in Michigan. Any good community that has an attorney on retainer or part of their
Mhm.
staff can walk them through that process. It's really not difficult at all. The biggest thing is just creating the bylaws and things like that. The land trust is a little bit more involved because it's creating a 501(c)(3). So the city of Frankfurt created both entities in our community. But currently, right now, it was Frankfurt Community Area Land Trust, and the city funded everything associated with creating that nonprofit through our attorney, which is Ross Hammersley with Olson Bizdoc. He's provided all of the guidance for us on our housing initiatives, and he works collaboratively with the city attorney in Traverse City and other attorneys across the state that are trying to fulfill the same opportunities for communities. So we have a really good collaborative network that we're able to take advantage of. But um, it's just you got to take the due diligence and do it. The land trust has been such an amazing asset to our community because it for us it creates the best tool possible to get people in homes
Mhm.
that they own. And it also allows us to ensure that those homes are affordable in perpetuity, so
Sure.
the people that own these homes, they can gain equity in the capital, in the home that they have, but the land is always going to be held with the land trust. So at some point in the future, where our families are having success and they're going to upgrade into a larger home or whatever their next move is, um, that home will become available to the next family that falls within the criteria associated with sustainable workforce housing. So it's a resource that we hope ensures that we can fulfill the needs of the community. We have 116 new homes to build based on our most recent market rate analysis, 1,300 for countywide. So that's going to be one of our best ways to make progress towards that.
Sure. The other thing I think is really interesting and an example that other communities could look at is you've also created an attainable housing district. So I'm curious if you can share with folks what that looks like in practice and how it encourages more housing options for local workers and families.
Well, as part of my involvement with Housing North, we work with Kent Wood, who has been working with our legislators on coming up with strategies for the private sector to play a role in the creation of workforce and sustainable housing. So, um, thankfully, through a lot of due diligence, um, the state of Michigan, towards the end of December in 2022, Governor Whitmer signed four different housing tools into legislation. One of them was Attainable Housing District, and this is really to create opportunities for communities to establish these districts to help. It's set aside for structures that have four or fewer units, and
Mhm.
essentially, if they are meeting the needs of fulfilling uh, folks that fall within the 60 to 120% of the AMI, the area median income level, um, and they charge rent that's based on the MISHDA PAT platform associated with that income range, then they could qualify for up to a 50% tax reduction on their ad valorem taxes. So we saw this as a huge opportunity. We have local businesses that are buying homes,
Mhm.
converting them, making them rental units for their workforce. So we felt that we needed to do what we could do as a community to help support that private investment, help our businesses, and hopefully also have short-term rental folks look at this and take a step back and say, maybe I want to help the community out in more long term, by taking advantages. And thankfully, we went through the process to create a district in November of 23. We created our first district, and then we started having more dialogue with the community, and people came out of the woodwork and requested that we expand the district. So um, this year in May, we expanded that district, and I'm proud to announce. Uh, Last city council meeting in October, we approved 5 properties to receive a 50% tax break, and it equates to 12 units within the city of Frankfort. So this, it's just a small thing that's going to allow the private sector to play a role in this, and it's significant for us as a community because that allows, with some of the zoning reform initiatives that we've created, we could see this being a positive trend upward in creating housing opportunities for our community.
Absolutely. And the city just approved its first attainable housing certificates. That's a really big milestone. So, another thing to celebrate and really brag about, I think.
Yeah.
What would you say that means for developers and for residents hoping to live there?
Well, we hope it sends a message to the community that the needs of the community are being addressed. We're a resort based community.
Mhm.
It's got a real seasonal economy. Thankfully, our shoulder seasons are expanding. We're seeing more activity earlier in the year and later in the fall. But at the end of the day, that we want to be a sustainable year round community. So for us having these things in place and having these opportunities in place, we're hopeful that it attracts new businesses to come to the
Mhm.
community because we're already seeing that. We're already seeing people that want to be here because of what the community is doing to create these opportunities for our workforce, and they want to be a part of that. So we're already seeing the positive attributes of what it's going to do long term with more additional investment in our community, and also it creates business incentives, you know in situations where they're creating housing. The live work concept is something that we want to see occur and expand in our community, especially in our Main Street corridor. So I think it's vital for us to have these tools in place to be the community that we desire. We're already, like I said, we're already experiencing positive trends towards new investment in our community, and it's just refreshing when we hear feedback when we're talking to folks that are looking at bringing in new types of businesses or new opportunities for our community on the foundational successes that we're having with housing. It's getting noticed, and it's a big part of allowing us to be more sustainable as we move forward as a community. It's
Yeah,
exciting.
it is exciting. It's something to brag about.
It is a
Um,
small scale stuff, but it's exciting.
right. And I think we can't, I don't want to understate how important some of that small scale stuff is to make meaningful change in communities. And I know that there are a lot of other communities, coastal communities, and others who are smaller and facing some of the same challenges. So to see a community that's making some of those changes, it is really inspiring. Uh, when we talked to prep for this call, we talked about the league's pattern book Homes for 21st Century Michigan, which is a design resource that you mentioned inspired portions of Article 8 in the city's zoning code, which is music to our ears. Can you tell us a bit about how that connection came about and how those design principles are influencing your local development?
Well, there was no question, for a community to be in the best position possible, we need to look at zoning and zoning reform.
Mhm.
So as a community, we've been looking at that for many years. But I go to these events and we collaborate, and the Michigan Municipal League is highly respected, especially with our city council. So when
Mhm.
I would come back with feedback from what MML is doing and the pattern book initiative, it really struck with us because we desperately wanted to move in that direction. And I'd come back and talk to the city council and the planning commission, and like, oh, Josh has got all these ideas, right? So, but once I laid out, so this is what the MML has provided. That's with the MML being so trusted by our city council. It allowed us to kind of move off center a little bit and proceed accordingly when we created Article 8. And Article 8 is we just approved our first. It's four single family homes that the land trust is building on a smaller parcel. Real creative opportunities that provides us, but the quadplex design is something that we actually I want to see happen as a permitted use. Right now, we can
Mm.
do a conversion of dwelling up to 3 units under zoning administrative approval, but through Article 8, which is a streamlined approval process that's tied to workforce housing. So it has to be intended for folks that fall within that 60 to 120 AMI. But that essentially allows us to do cottage cluster concepts. We could do
Mhm.
duplex units with an ADU anywhere in the city, quadplex units with an ADU. So as small as a 3,750 square foot lot, we can have a quadplex with an ADU. That's 5 new units on a
Mhm.
on a small parcel. So we're already having conversations with our school district about expanding some housing opportunities, and the private sector, your private property owners are coming out of the woodwork and want to be a part of this. So we're really hopeful that the inspiration that was brought on by the pattern books allows us to continue to create the housing that we need for our community. And we wanna try to pattern what MML has done and actually go a little further with having architectural concepts within our own Article 8. So maybe we'll be looking at some grant opportunities that we could, or if MML is successful moving forward toward cottage clusters and other duplex designs, taking the pattern book concept and expanding it. We'd love to be a part of that.
Well, it's always a delight to hear about our communities who are putting some of that work to use. I have to give a shout out to our colleagues on our policy research labs team, Melissa Milton Pung, Richard Murphy, Shanna Draheim, all had a hand in that. And so I got to give them a shout out for great work. And others on the team, of course, Jade is on the team. Um, so, housing, of course, is a big issue. We sort of focused today's uh, live with the league on housing, but I want to talk about Frankfurt sort of overall to close this out. As a superintendent there, what else would you say are big wins for you in your tenure, or things that you're incredibly proud of?
Well, so I just celebrated my 25th year
Hmm.
as the city superintendent. But I'm so proud. We spent the early part of my time here enhancing placemaking initiatives. Creating a
Yeah.
strong sense of place, and we put so much time and investment into that. And as a result, our parks and the recreational amenities that we have flourished, and that was all done so with uh year-round sustainability as the root of that. um Beyond that, we're seeing a lot of investment opportunity being drawn to our community, and I think that a lot of that has to just with the foundation that we've laid out with being a complete community. And I think
Mhm.
that's what we're striving to be as a complete community, whatever that means. But in our eyes, um, that means having the sustainability and resiliency to facilitate all of the obstacles that this world is throwing at us, and we're just having so much positive collaboration and synergy. It's just an amazing time to see all of the you plan your work to work your plan, and
Sure.
that takes time, and we're seeing years of dedication to planning come to fruition right now, and it's exciting, and during a time that um, it's hard to develop. The cost of
Mhm.
construction is insane, and we still see a lot of positive investment opportunities that are really in our community, in our Frankfort, Alberta community, and Benzie County as a whole. So, I'm just revert back to how proud I am and how the community has accepted doing what it needs to do to be in a better position. It's a if you really think about it, the cost of living outpacing the living wage happened right in front of our eyes, and I think we're doing a far better job at addressing that. Moving forward as a community, I would really love to see a strong push towards skilled trades initiatives. And I think skilled trades can play a big role in the development of the housing that we desperately need in our communities. And of
Mhm.
course, the emerging technology and Michigan being a trend setter on many fronts with technology, I think can play a big role in that as we move forward as a community. So we'd love to see a panelized construction facility relocated in our community, and provide housing that's being offered regionally,
Mhm.
if not throughout the entire state. So it's exciting. I think we've dedicated ourselves to the process, and we've trusted the process, and realizing that we got to reinvent ourselves every so often to stay fresh, stay above, and keep moving.
Absolutely. Well, I'm feeling so inspired by this. We do have a question that's come in from the audience. Can you talk a little bit about how residents have responded to a lot of these housing changes that you've implemented recently?
Well, they've responded quite favorably, and I think a lot of this, again, we've invested in this for a very long time, and I think a lot of folks are starting to see what we're dealing with as far as obstacles when they had, you have w- Frankfurt, this community does have some wealth, so when we start getting individuals more involved is when they start realizing some of the obstacles that we deal with on a day-to-day basis when they go to call a contractor to have work done. They're realizing, or where their favorite restaurant's not open on a Monday or a Tuesday or any specific day, that they would rather it be open. So I really think that the community has responded well and has gotten behind us. Whenever we've done any significant zoning reform initiatives, and approved a tilt. We recently approved a 0% tilt for a 12-unit project that our housing commission partnered with. We rarely get any community backlash on that. Um, on October 21st, when we approved the Attainable Housing incentives for 5 properties, we did have some folks in the audience that wanted us to be conscientious of the long-term impact. So through that effective communication, that collaboration, instead of just approving a 12-year uh, tax incentive right off the bat, we said, well, we'll grant 4-year 50% tax breaks for these 5 properties, with the understanding that we want to reevaluate the success of this program to ensure that we're doing the right things as a community. And that was accepted very well by someone that would normally be in opposition to what we're doing. So I think at the end of the day, it's effective communication, but also I think people are realizing that their day-to-day struggles in their own home is polarized when we're dealing on a community-wide level.
Well, Josh, thank you so much. I loved hearing about Frankfurt and talking about housing with you and hearing about your enthusiasm for your work and what's happening there. And I gotta say, shout out to 25 years of service to the city. That's an incredible accomplishment and dedication to public service. So thank you so much for joining us and for sharing a bit about your neck of the woods.
Thank you for having me, and I'm always happy to share the positive things that are going on in Northwest Michigan up here in Frankfort. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. All right, we are going to zoom out to the statewide level and talk more about housing with Jen Richtring from our state and federal affairs team. Jen, the league has obviously been very active this year around housing policy. Can you give us an update on where things stand, especially with the My Home program proposal and the zoning reforms communities are now implementing?
Yeah. Thanks, Emily. And thanks, Josh, because I think there is a lot of inspiration to draw from Frankfurt's story and a lot of success
Mhm.
takes time. Change takes
Yeah.
time. And so it's always great to hear about what's going on. And the My Home program proposal, we are still, moving along, building support. In fact, it was great when we were doing our prep call and I got to talk to Josh about the program. And
Yeah.
I don't want to quote him, but I think it was sign me up. Where do I find this kind of a
Yep.
response? So we're still working on building support. We're hoping to have a My Home program bills here before the end of the year. And so again, it's moving along, but the more support that we can build for the proposal, so we can make it into a program to add that extra layer of gap financing for projects, because it costs what it costs to build a home. And
Mhm.
so then to try to make it affordable, there has to be additional layers of funding or incentives, whether those are grants, loans. There's got to be other things to actually make that happen. And so, we are getting a lot of traction. But again, if you haven't checked out the proposal, please get online, look at it. If you have questions, send me questions. If you have feedback on any of the information. Now, again, the devil's in the details of building out bills. So
Right.
we've got to work out those. Yes, there's like 14 zoning reforms that are recommended in there. Um, there's not a lot of meat behind them right now because we didn't want the proposal to be 100 pages long either.
Right.
So working on those things, but still looking for folks' support, folks to talk to their legislators. And again, this is going to be the first place you're going to hear about it, or in our Inside 208 blog when we have those bills and they're getting introduced. But yeah, so far so good. And it's gaining traction, and from builders, developers, municipalities, we are hearing that this could be the but for in a lot of projects out there, especially with some of the programs that have been in the past not being there any longer. The revitalization and placemaking RAP grants are gone. The
Mhm.
missing middle um, program that Mishta was having is no longer right now. So we're really looking to add this program as an additional layer.
And Frankfurt's story connects really nicely with our state level priorities. It's got some great examples. What are you hearing from other local leaders who are looking to move similar housing efforts forward?
Yeah, well, I think I think Frankfurt was the first. Oh, you're on. If you're talking to us, you are you are muted. I saw your lips moving. But Frankfurt, you were the worst, or the not the worst,
The
the
worst.
first to actually put one of those attainable housing districts together.
Yeah.
And we did feature Josh at CapCon last year to
Mhm.
try to walk some municipalities through that process so they didn't make the same kind of side steps, or Josh said we did this but we didn't need to, or we had to do this again. And so we've been trying to feature some of those things. But then I was up in Traverse City, was it just 2 weeks ago, I think, and saw Josh at a housing um, summit up there, and he said that they had passed the certificates, which is so exciting, to
Yeah.
actually, I mean, setting the district is one thing, but actually um, having those certificates and supporting those, and now that coming to the end. And you're right, Josh, that was December of 22 because those sunset in 2027. So we're just
Oh.
working on extending those sunsets here again in the upcoming years. So
Well, one of the biggest things that we've discovered here in the last few years, and we had some perfect timing situations with, especially with our Lake and Main project where we partnered with Homestretch. The reality with housing to be sustainable and affordable, we have to invest 100 to $150,000 per unit to
mhm,
make them viable. That's the reality. Our Lake and Main project was a perfect example. The city donated the land, so we gave a 0% PILT. There were no taxes being generated, so it was a no-brainer for the city council to approve the 0% PILT. We had a $600,000 missing middle grant from Mishta. We had a $500,000 ARPA distribution from Benzie County, and we had just about $100,000 of miscellaneous grant funding. All in all, that project had 1.2 million in cash subsidy upfront, with in addition to the land donation and 0% taxes that are going to be generated for the next 40 years on that property. The reality at the end of the day, without that 1.2 million upfront, they weren't going to be affordable. So when you break down and do the math, it's $100,000 a unit. So as communities, we need to be prepared to come up with $100,000 per unit to make them truly affordable. So it requires a lot of unique partnerships and collaboration. Um, and we're nowhere near out of this, so we got a lot of work to do.
well, and when Josh said that $100,000 number, that really matches up what we've proposed to the My Home program for the grant for new construction. $100,000 per unit, as
Mhm.
well as 30, or it could be going up, but for rehab per unit. So that you know when he said that, I was like, oh. So we are, field tested, and I'm having more and more developers either reach out to, kind of our inquiry desk at the league, or personally to me about the program and where's the application, when can I apply, and we're like,
It's a
support it, help
proposal.
us get it to the finish line to be a program. And so
Yeah.
that's why, and we've had some folks that are like, well, I can't propose or I can't support something that isn't done in final. And I guess I can understand that a little bit, but what we're just asking is the support of the proposal moving forward. And again, asking for input and suggestions from our members and other housing stakeholders, so that this can be the most productive and usable, and actually produce more homes. In looking forward, we are still looking at the possibility of preemption, zoning preemption in the name
Mhm.
of housing. We're
Mhm.
still told that those bills will be making a reintroduction of the same ones we had at the end of last year, plus more. Unfortunately, getting the information right now has been difficult. Local government has been cut out of this conversation entirely. And
Mhm.
so we get tidbits here and there from folks. But I mean, our members, as soon as something happens, you will know about it. Or if we get a heads up that something's coming, you're going to know about it. And trying to show why the My Home program would be a better route to go, because we keep asking the question, how many homes will be produced from preemption? And that's not anything we've gotten an answer on, as well as how, with just straight preemption, how does that help affordability in any way, shape, or form? Because there's no affordability factors actually built into that. So I see in the chat here we have a request. We're getting several requests for accessory dwelling units. Um, there's one or two off the top of my head. I know there's at least one in the pattern book 2.0, the second one.
Mhm.
There are some accessory dwelling units in that. So I think ADUs can be a great um, alternative, or a great addition to help with the housing problem. The factor, though, is getting them financed is very difficult, as well as you have to have someone who wants to be a landlord. And unless that, additional housing unit is going to a family member or a friend or something like that. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of factors that come around when it's ADUs. It's not just, oh, locals won't allow them. Um, I think a lot of municipalities are open to the conversation and having accessory dwelling units for long-term living. The I know in some of our destination places, ADUs are talked about for vacation rentals, and vacation rentals are needed, but you got to balance that housing. And right now, having housing for people to live in and work in the community is much more important and needed than more vacation rentals in a lot of places.
Yeah, Jennifer, we've allowed ADUs in Frankfurt since 2011, and they've been a great addition. Early on, that was the biggest concern is that there was just going to be additional short-term rental units. But what we found is that they've been developed for the purpose of family overflow situations.
Mm.
Also, the adult child that has a good job that can't afford the $400,000 homes. That's a short-term option for them, and then the aging parents that still have some independence. So we've saw the need associated with ADUs being critical for our community, and we've structured our short-term rental ordinance in a way that allows us to be mindful of those situations and control it a little bit more effectively. But yeah, and the state needs to help us out too, and not, re- you know, the homestead exemption. There's a certain percentage of that gets charged out. Um, so hopefully we can continue to have those conversations with legislators that if a home is homesteaded, then the ADU should go along with it, um, regardless if it's rented or not. So hopefully we can see some of those changes, but we think they're great, and we're seeing townships create them now in their ordinances or allow
Yeah.
them. Sorry.
Well,
And
in
I
shop.
know
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jen. I know in the chat I mentioned our colleagues Melissa Melton Pong and Richard Murphy who are joining us today. And so they're chatting us with some additional info for folks with these questions. So in the pattern book, the Abbott model is 625 square feet, which can be a backyard cottage ADU, and also includes a version on top of a two-car garage. So I just want to point folks to that. Thanks for our friends Murph, Melissa in the chat who are sharing that info with us. Um, so, Jen, as we look ahead to the next year, what should our members be watching for in terms of housing or development bills? Obviously, we talked about preemption, which is an issue that's likely to come up. But I know you talked a little bit, or you mentioned to me short term rental bills, with one adding an excise tax. Can you walk us through that and give us an update
Yeah.
on where those things stand?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have very limited numbers in the remaining session days this year. But
Yep.
there are some things just this year that still need to get done. The PA 210 and 255, the Commercial Redevelopment and Rehabilitation Acts, sunset at the end of this year. So we are working to get those done here very quickly. Actually, right before this, I was on a call getting an update on what the House is expected to do with economic development. It looks like the first phase of that really is going to be more around job creation and retention. And then they're going to roll out some more bills, most likely in the beginning of next year. So I think economic development is going to continue to be a focus. Housing, again, we are looking for or keeping our eye out for housing preemption, zoning bills, or I should say zoning preemption in the name of housing bills, as well as trying to get the My Home program bill introduced as well. We did have, and I think we've had some questions, so I wanted to chat about this really quick. There were three bills introduced a week or two ago: 5138, 5139, and 5140, dealing with short term rentals. The good news is these are not short term rentals, as in zoning preemption bills. These are authorizing local units of government to levy up to a 3% accommodations tax on all lodging types, including short term rentals. In the past, we've had bills we've supported that had a short term rental excise tax in it. This is actually allowing for a local unit to levy up to 3% on all accommodations. So, hotel, motel, in addition to short term rentals. Now, you would have to get authorization, and the three bills, one authorizes Treasury to administer, collect, and enforce. One expands the use tax, and then that last one is the one that's authorizing the locals. We're looking to see if those are going to get um, any kind of attention. I don't think we have enough time this year that they would see a hearing, but they might see a hearing. And the league, we're running these through our internal process right now. I have the Economic and Land Use Committee looking at them and providing some feedback. So we don't officially have position on these yet, but the league supports anything in concept that is going to help municipalities recover or receive funding for that public cost of tourism. And that's what these bills really aim to do. I know there are some other groups out there right now that are opposing those. They've come out strong. Restaurant and lodging, the Convention and Visitors Bureau. So some of those groups, maybe if you like these bills and you are supportive in your municipality, maybe talk to your CVB, your local CVB, and your local restaurants and lodging providers, and try to have that conversation of why this might work well for your group. And there's always the threat out there of, well, if you raise it a little bit more, nobody's going to come and stay in hotels. They said that about um, the lodging tax that Kent County and Grand Rapids, a
Mhm.
year or two ago, passed to help provide with some of their amphitheater and things that they are building in Grand Rapids. I stayed in Grand Rapids this past weekend. The tax was $11. I looked at it
Mhm.
specifically. Um, but I'll tell you, before I booked my room, I just looked at the cost of the room. And I think that's what most people do, when they're
Yep.
looking at these things. So
Right.
I do want to shy away from the argument of nobody's going to book a hotel room. Um, so I think in concept, these could be really good. Like I said, we'll get them through our official process. But I think they will be hard moving forward just because of that pushback from restaurant and lodging. We're going to get pushback from the realtors because they don't have any kind of zoning or regulation component. Uh, but all in all, definitely support and concept of getting resources to municipalities to help with that cost, that public cost of tourism.
Thanks, Jen. Any last thoughts about these last couple of months of the year and any activity we might be seeing?
Yeah, I think, in the House, we're supposed to see some economic development. There is still some pushback going between the House and the Senate with transparency on enhancement grants. The Senate did pass a version. It was not the version that the Speaker wanted to see. And so we really haven't seen, since the budget was passed, any Senate bills moving in the House. And so, there's that dynamic to deal with, and how long that will carry over into next year is to be determined. Like I said, not many days this week. And next year, or this week, this season or session
Mhm.
still here. Um, the legislature's coming up on a 2-week break for
Mhm.
hunting and Thanksgiving next week. They won't be in tomorrow because of Veterans Day. So a shorter week this week. And then, December, only a handful of days to try to get some things done. So it will be very interesting to see. And then next year, like election, House,
Um,
Senate, governor. We have some big congressional races here in Michigan. We definitely won't see a lot of controversial things happening
right.
next year. And I think we'll see not a ton of action. Not that we had a ton of action this last year either,
Mhm.
but not a ton of action moving forward because folks are going to be out there campaigning and either trying to get elected or reelected.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Jen. Always great insight and context for us. Before we wrap up, a few quick reminders for everyone. Speaking of elections, there was one last week, and it's time to get your new council members, commissioners, trustees, anybody started on the right foot. We are offering 3 sessions of our newly elected officials trainings. So if you've got someone in your community who could use it, go ahead and share this information. We've got one December 4th in person in our Lansing office and 2 virtual options, one on January 22nd and another on February 7th. You can learn more and register on our website. We're going to post the link in the chat in just a moment. I also want to shout out our online learning platform. We've got on demand content that's there for you anytime you need it. So you can access courses on topics like ethics, lobbying, local government finance, local government 101, perfect for earning elected officials academy credits, and perfect for finding some trainings on your own schedule. If some of our other trainings don't fit, or you want something you can come back to and replay over and over again. And then we have another event coming up. Thursday, December 12th at noon, the Michigan Women in Municipal Government are hosting a webinar, AI and Local Government Tools and Guidance for Responsible Use. This session explores how to use artificial intelligence responsibly in public service with practical examples and policy considerations. You can find details for that and register on our events calendar, also in the chat. I want to give another major shout out to Josh Mills from Frankfort and Jen for joining us, and to all of you for watching. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time on Live with the League.